session. This is number 18. I amaze myself that we're already on 18 of these recordings. And so we're live. I'll wait till I see some people who are there. You're probably just about to see us. Oh, let me mute the YouTube. Okay. So we get about a 10-second delay on YouTube. So I will, as usual, wait to see, make sure that we are seen and heard. Uh, Hannah and Jake, hi. Let's check your audio too.
Aloha, everyone.
Hello,
All right.
Nice to be here.
here in the warmth.
Yeah, exactly. Here in Hawaii.
Here in Hawaii. Nice to be here in Colorado, though it's cold in my estimation. Coach Marvel, Christy, hey, and Ralph, they can see and hear us. Okay, beauty.
Good.
If that's the case, we'll roll. Well, yeah, this is S.A.G.E session 18. And as we often do, we are jumping from or continuing, expanding upon a blog that Jake wrote, which is over at Substack, which if I made the effort to memorize it, I wouldn't have to ask you for the URL. But Jake, give it to us, please.
I think that if you just search Jake Eagle Substack or The Unorthodox Therapist, I think it comes up either way.
Okay.
I've never searched for myself.
The blog there that you did just last, 2 days ago?
Yeah.
It was on wisdom, and I'm eager to, well, you did unpack, you unpacked some concepts around wisdom, and I want to continue that thread. So if anyone wants to read that, anybody who's watching this live, you can go check it out there and follow along a little bit, though we're going to be pulling out excerpts and talk about it. I would ask why you expounded on wisdom, Jake, but I guess you told that at the beginning. It's from a video you saw, I think.
Yeah, we saw Tristan Harris being interviewed by Stephen Bartlett. Tristan Harris is the guy that was responsible for making the documentary called The Social Dilemma. I don't remember, it came out several years ago. And he was very involved with social media companies. I think he worked at Facebook, and he started to become really concerned about what was going on. So he made that film, which got a lot of attention. And now, in addition to being concerned about social media, he's very concerned about AI. And so he was talking about it the other day and talking about how the solution in so many cases involves bringing wisdom and applying it to solve these really great challenges we have. And he described wisdom in a way that really resonated for me. When he was talking about it, I just thought he was really talking about S.A.G.E. And I pulled out just a few points in the article. The one that I intrigued myself with the most was he talked about wisdom involving restraint, which I really liked. I actually haven't heard people talk about it that way before. But the idea of restraint is for me, is that pause between experiencing a stimulus and responding to the stimulus. That pause where I can hopefully be thoughtful, consider what's going on, maybe see the bigger picture, recognize that the way I see the world is not the truth. It's not the only way to see things. So I'm creating a lot of space for other people. He also, or in the article, he mentioned it, and then I built upon the idea that wisdom involves mindfulness. And it really is an act of presence, that when we bring wisdom to bear, we almost always are going to be present and addressing what's going on or what we can do right now, because that's where we can bring about change. And then he talked about care. When you think about care, I think of consideration. Consideration, yes, for myself, but also for other people. So when I stop blaming other people, when I stop projecting my ideas onto other people, to me, that's a form of care and consideration. And all of these things combined are aspects of wisdom. And then Ralph made a comment that he thought it also engenders humility. Yeah, which I agree. I thought that was a nice addition. And in my mind, I see a relationship between wisdom, maturity, and agency. And we'll talk about that during this conversation. But to me, there's a relationship to all of them. And SAGE brings all of those components together, which is part of why I am so passionate about it.
I was Ralph's response to, and you just said it engenders humility. Was that wisdom or sage? Was he referring?
I believe wisdom.
Wisdom. Okay. With that said, then I want to say it can engender humility. I really, as I usually do, I look into the words and I'm concerned with how we as a culture define humility these days. And not to make it a focus necessarily, but in your article and talking about AI, and you just referenced AI, I I see. I mean, we utilize AI, and I feel that we utilize it to help enhance and discern wisdom. But I'm going to butt it culturally, globally, whatever. I'm concerned that AI will decrease our cultural wisdom as we can use it as such a substitution for contemplation, for discernment that we are led. I think even here with our work in Sage, even when we research and use AI, we end up coming back and we sit back as humans and discern with context that AI just can't get into our brain and encompass. Um, well, so much,
Yeah.
even more need for Sage.
Yeah. And that really was Tristan's point. He
Mm.
was basically saying that because of the pace of change that AI brings about, it doesn't really allow a lot of time for reflection. And a lot of people are making assumptions based on AI. And so he was seeing that wisdom is part of the antidote to the changes that AI is bringing about.
Thinking about wisdom culturally, my perception is that we have gotten to referencing wisdom in regards to a person that we perceive as having a lot of knowledge. They're smart. I have a lot of people with aspects of wisdom. I'm not going to call wisdom one thing, but if we look at it as, wisdom has lots of facets to it, that they contain wisdom in a certain area. So usually why I have them on the show. Now, are they wise? I don't know. I don't know. It'd take a lot more for me to understand, but they have wisdom in a certain area, and I'm wanting to glean from it something that they have understood, they've applied, they have integrated. Uh, but yeah, I'm concerned that we as a culture have gotten when somebody has, they're an intellectual, they've got a bunch of knowledge in an area, they're really smart in this certain area, they got a TED talk, it's got 1 million views, that must be wisdom. And I don't find that. I do find continually, and I think I have been this person to some degree, that I may have great expertise in a certain area, but I wouldn't have called me wise necessarily in the past. And there's a lot of people I wouldn't call them wise. So to look at this and expand on what is wisdom, I think when I look at it, I think that's probably fewer than more people I would deem wise these days. Maybe a lost art, even to a degree.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that we sometimes confuse people being intelligent with wisdom. And actually, they're very different. Wisdom has to do with the application of whatever intelligence
Yeah.
we have. And applying intelligence without maturity would not be wisdom. Applying intelligence without consideration for other people would not really be wisdom. It's a meta state that goes beyond just being smart. One of the things we've talked about in recent weeks, Kevin, is the idea of our agency quotient. And people are familiar with IQ, intelligence, EQ, emotional intelligence. And what we're developing within SAGE is the idea of the agency quotient. And there is a very good argument that increasing our agency quotient is a way to increase our emotional intelligence and even our general intelligence. Because what we're doing is we're slowing down, we're being more reflective, and we stop confusing ourselves with what's me and what's you, what's true and what's not true. We eliminate a lot of those confusions. And as we do that, I believe what's happening is we're becoming more intelligent, more emotionally intelligent, have more agency, all of which cultivates to wisdom.
And we don't think we're right all the time. That's the humility part.
Yeah.
Hannah, I was just going there to, I respect so much now somebody, again, I feel like I'm in an acute place with having guests on my podcast. And when I ask a question out of my personal curiosity, and when they pause and look away, I gratify myself as opposed to them just going autopilot answer. And to Hannah, what you said then, to have them come out and go, huh, that's a good question.
Mhm.
Not quite sure, but this is my, I have a friend who's really studying spirituality, and he's doing that, like that quote that we attribute to Einstein and some others, that the more I learn, the more I quote know, the less I know. The more I learn and understand, the less I know. To me, I interpret that as a hallmark of wisdom, the pause, the slowing down, which, as you guys know, I have, that's been I've challenged myself with slowing down. Maybe one of the hardest things. And I look at that as, I appreciate that and interpret that as an aspect of wisdom, at least.
That's why we love your early morning messages when you're having your cup of coffee. You're really slow and you're so much more mature and wise. And then as the day goes along,
Isn't that when I had one of my early podcasts was with Dr. Ben Hardy, and it was about a book called Willpower Doesn't Work. And he was exaggerating the point, I feel, but he was saying willpower, we don't have an endless supply. There's a finite aspect, just like any energy, muscle, whatnot. And if we wait till the evening after a long day that we may have challenged ourselves with it, and we wait till the evening and then try to assert our willpower on not eating that bag of chips that's in the cupboard, you're you're uh, you're in for a disappointment probably. Maybe take the earlier part of the day where you have more willpower and throw the chips out, put them in a lockbox, or don't buy chips at the grocery store. Then you don't have to rely on that afterwards. So I need an end of the day something to come into my face and go, Kevin, throttle back, throttle back. Yeah. Well,
I think you'd love having Tristan Harris on your show because he did exactly what you're describing 3 or 4 times. It's a long interview, but 3 or 4 times he would be asked a question. He would stop and he would say, give me a minute. I need to collect my thoughts because there's a lot going on. He would close his eyes. He would sit back, maybe take 15, 20, 30 seconds, which is a long time to be quiet. And then he would come back very thoughtfully. It was really a wonderful demonstration of what I would call wisdom.
And this guy is brilliant.
Yeah, very, very. We inspired ourselves listening to him talk about what's the solution to social media and what's the solution to AI. First person we've ever heard that had so many great ideas.
well, speaking to the pause there, that, the word I like to use, or I just don't have a better one for sage, is that speaking sagely, for me at least, I can own it for me. I don't know that we'll put it in writing, but it forces me to be aware, because I can't just react. Maybe the day will come. Well, no, I don't want to. I guess that's the point. I don't want to. I want to stop and consider what I am speaking, which belies what I'm thinking, feeling, ultimately believing. And I feel the difference in myself, in my peace. I mean, that's the biggest selling point that I have. But it to me, it forces awareness. It forces being present right here, right now. It forces me not to go into the past, not go into the future, not go into autopilot. And for me, what I disrupt then is performance to some degree. I used to feel like, man, I can roll and jive and juke with the punches, and we're doing a conversations, and somebody asks a question and I can respond right back, and I'm doing my thing. And yet now, as I slow down, what do I get? Better testimonials.
Mm,
It was a more meaningful show, is what people say.
yeah.
I resonated, Kevin, when you, well, like here when we do the show and you guys say, you just talked, Kevin, and you use the word it a lot. What happened there? Hmm. That people respond to that. They don't respond to me just jiving and rolling. I just got a big, I don't think I told you guys, you knew I had a big speaking engagement at a really, really high end thing. I got accepted for it. Uh, but not, but, and they're going to do what I really enjoy doing. I'm having a conversation with a guy. I'm not doing a presentation. I get to do a conversation, which is organic by nature. I mean, it's going to be. I'm not scripting the thing. We're just going to talk. I'm going to do my. I'm going to be curious and sage and see what
Beautiful.
happens. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. The can I unpack? I want to hit on wisdom
Yeah.
and integrate sage into wisdom. Christy, I see you in the chat. You said AQ. Yeah, uh, Jake, you came up with that idea. I don't know, a couple weeks ago. We all know, and I just went on a tangent here because I saw your chat. We know IQ, intelligence quotient. Most people these days know EQ, emotional intelligence, and this, yeah, agency. Uh, I'm sorry, I just said quotient. Sorry, IQ, intelligence quotient, EQ, emotional, and now AQ, agent. Yeah, I feel like that will resonate with a lot of people. It does me. So I'm glad it does for you too, Christy. Um, okay, wisdom. I want to relate it to sage. So I appreciate the AI overview when you look up a word these days. And it said wisdom is the ability to apply knowledge, experience, and insight to make sound judgments and decisions. It is a combination of deep understanding and good sense, involving a balanced and thoughtful approach to life that goes beyond mere intellectual knowledge or intelligence. Key aspects of wisdom include the ability to see beneath the surface of things, an awareness of long-term consequences, and a sense of balance. And then as AI does, it gave one, two, three, four, five different areas that I just give you the headlines. Integration of knowledge, like application, but I like it. We talk about or integration a lot. Integration of knowledge, good judgment, insight, balance, and application of knowledge. Um, again, that's as we started out with. To me, that puts an outlook on wisdom that I feel, my experience, my interpretation is we have lost in today's world, and we apply wisdom to more shallow perspectives. Thoughts?
Well, my main thought is that I agree with all of that, and I don't think it's possible to have as much wisdom outside of SAGE as what's possible inside of SAGE. The reason being that if I'm not using SAGE language and I'm using what I call the illusion of objective language, which is how we all speak almost all the time. For short, we call it habitual. But really, what we're doing is we're acting as if we're talking about an objective reality, which is an illusion. So when I'm talking that way, I'm going to represent things that are not accurate. And that's going to undermine my wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to start telling you about you, telling you how you feel, what you think, what you did. all of which is a distortion, or most of which is a distortion. There are some things you'll do that are observable, but most of what you do, I will interpret, and then I will tell you how I'm making meaning of what you're doing. That's different. And I'm not going, if I don't know SAGE, I'm not going to be clear about whether I'm just talking about myself and the way I make meaning, or whether I'm telling you about you. And as soon as I start telling you about you, I've gone into this very strange world that's mostly it's a hallucination. And I decrease my wisdom when I do that.
Okay, your lead off statement there was you feel wisdom needs or requires sage. This morning, I wrote to myself, and I'll probably put it up on a blog. I'm going to revive my blog again. I was reading a book, spiritual guru guy. I align with so much of what he shared, and yet he shares so much objectively, and it's pure faith. It's perspective. I may align with it, but he shares it objectively. And I look at that and I feel that for me, him speaking that way undermines the point he's trying to make. I disconnect. I'm left to agree or disagree.
Right.
And so I'm making notes and going, oh, I really align with this. I don't. I think he's missed it here. And so it's an either or. If he shared it, kind of what we've talked about before, I like the idea of be so confident you don't have to try to make it a fact. You don't have to try to prove what you're saying. You can be so confident you fully own it. This is what, in my experience, this is what I interpret and put my faith in, and I'm going to make my decision and choose. It's great. You knock yourself out. And you saying it that way, my trust increases. And in this concept, as you guys know, I'm living daily as I'm surrounded by, especially a bunch of kids, but even close friends and whatnot. I had a discussion this morning with 3 close friends, guys my age, that a doctor, a realtor, and an airline pilot. And we're having these discussions. And the more I speak sagely, I'm just watching their increased integration, engagement's a word, their increased engagement and curiosity from what I perceive we would have had in the past when I was trying to sell something and convince and share it objectively.
Yeah, this is, I mean, the paradox, because people work so hard to tell you about the world and tell you about yourself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing that you said that stood out for me in your blog. So again, folks, if you look up, Jake Eagle Substack, you'll find in this blog, it would have been Sunday, November 30th, I believe, on wisdom. And you cited the talk that you heard from Tristan, and second paragraph or so, I think you said something clicked inside me. The story in my head when I read that, with you kind of admitting that you discovered something. This is not something that you have figured out and it's done. It's set in concrete that you're discovering. I thought of I just recently had another book on psychedelics pitched to me for having somebody on the show, and they're endorsed by all the big names. I think Peter Attia and Gabor Mate and all these folks, and it's another one on psychedelics. Point being, people have been doing psychedelics a long time. I think far late, beyond what we realize. They've been doing psychedelics, they've been doing plant medicine, and they're discovering more and they're discovering more and they're discovering more. But people are doing them because they get a benefit. They don't know them. But the people that I know that have done psychedelics, they'll attest to the benefits, but I've asked them specifically why. Scientifically, tell me, understand how you went to the 15th dimension and had a conversation with God and whatever. Well, they can't do that, but they're discovering that concept is how I experience sage. As I speak sagely and speak subjectively to what almost all my communication is about is subjectively is subjective perspective. When I speak subjectively and when I take full ownership, I'm just watching things develop within. I just they develop, and I discover things in me, and then as I speak sagely to others, I just continue to watch. I had somebody recently who said they did a psychedelic trip or whatever, and they said since then they feel like they're a foot back from everything.
Mm.
And I thought, I think I'm experiencing a similar having a similar experience is how I see it with Sage. As I kind of step back and I watch and I'm discovering. It's like a continual discovering. All that to point to with you said something clicked inside of me. I To me that's the I would say that's part of the process that maybe that's it. Maybe we should call we're the linguistic psychedelics.
I like that.
You think that I just wrote that? Okay, I'm taking credit for that. Uh, yeah,
Well, what's similar with psychedelics and sage is that in both cases we disorient ourselves. So psychedelics,
right.
we completely find ourselves in an unfamiliar state. And with sage, if we really apply ourselves, I will disorient myself because I'm not going to be on autopilot. And I'm having to pause. I'm thinking, I'm breaking down. Am I talking about you or am I talking about my projection of you? All of this, I disorient myself because this is not what I've done for the first many decades of my life, where I've more or less spoken on autopilot. Most of us do.
Yeah, when we become really present, we do step back and become the observer of what's going on. We actually pause and see the world as it actually is. We're not thinking about the past or the future.
And it's part of why I think why you don't use a lot of words, and whatever you say, you generally say fairly slowly. And I think you reside more in that state naturally uh, than a lot of people that I know.
And to connectedness, which is a term it feels paramount to me with Sage. I feel connected to myself, connected to others. And so so Hannah, when you talk and sagely, I feel I was about to say something unsage. I was about to say I feel invited in. I guess I invite myself in, but I feel like there's space. I think it's curiosity. When you sit there, when anybody sits there and does like what we were talking about earlier, pauses, and most people will end up, looking somewhere. It's just a way to focus, I guess, and we'll kind of look. My curiosity, I lean. You talked about this, I think, Jake, before. You lean in. You
Yeah,
you lean in when you speak. When you tell me, when
right.
you start being a teller, tell. Yeah, I'm backing up. I'm questioning, and I really just irritate myself that you're telling me because often it happens within a conversation where I feel like I've got a lot of knowledge and understanding, and you're telling me when you are openly contemplating kind of what you said, Hannah, going, oh gosh, I'm not sure. Let me think about that. Oh my goodness, I feel I connect myself with you. I connect myself with your thinking. I find myself curiousing myself,
Mhm.
and I'm really interested to hear what you're going to say. And when you say it that way, I by proxy, I do feel I'm gonna go ahead and say it for now. I feel invited in to like we just got in the not the ring. That sounds bad like a boxing match, but we just entered into this together as opposed to you tell, I tell, and instead of a tennis match where we're doing jujitsu and grappling. I don't know if that sounds good either, but you get my point, I think. Oh,
This also has to do, Peter's on the call, and yesterday I was talking to him about the term sensory acuity. And sensory acuity is our ability to read other people, to read their body language. And when we're in that kind of performance mode where we're talking rapidly and sort of pouring information onto other people, it's pretty obvious that our sensory acuity decreases. Where when I slow down and I sit back a little bit and I'm more reflective, I'm better able to read other people. I'm better able to see. And I often say to Hannah, I'm astounded how few people seem to have really good sensory acuity. A lot of people will talk to both of us, and we're pretty good listeners, and they'll just keep coming and coming with information. And we are utterly boring ourselves. And they don't pick up on that. They just keep coming. And we always surprise ourselves. We always think kind of obvious that we're not engaging. Doesn't matter, because they're simply delivering information. They're not actually connecting. They're not actually engaging with us. And I intrigue myself in that because sometimes people learn about SAGE and they'll say, well, isn't it a little self-oriented? But I think it's the opposite, in that instead of thinking I'm the only person here and I'm right and what I have to say is what everybody wants to hear, I recognize that everybody is bringing their own perspective. And that's a very different way of going through the world.
Peter says, to be clear, you weren't telling me that I was boring you with a fire hose of information.
Actually, Peter, I didn't want to say it that way.
Fair
No,
enough.
I wasn't saying that.
Well, Peter, I will direct this a little bit to you, this concept of, well, Jake, you just said, speaking sagely, self-oriented. I want you to be self-oriented. I would love, be a fun practice to be in a group and say, okay, we're going to have a discussion. And when it's your turn to speak, you must take 10 seconds and check in with yourself. Because I'm more and more lately with myself, and I'm thinking about it with other people, but I can own it for myself, thinking, okay, what's my motive here in the response? I just been asked something or something's been posed. What's my motive? I blow myself away sometimes with that. We talked about that because often I'll realize I don't have a motive that I think is even beneficial. I got nothing to add.
Yeah.
I'm good. I don't need to. Or I, especially early on in this process, really amazed myself with realizing when I asked that question, how different it would be. Kind of back to the how would secure Kevin respond, but what is the motive here? Am I feeling insecure, trying to protect myself? Am I trying just to bolster myself just out of personal bias? Gosh, on that note, I have found myself saying to people when asked about something, I'll preface it with my bias, preface it with an admission of bias, which I think we always have. But just to say it, there's something I motivate myself, or I inspire myself by saying, okay, so you're asking me about, running. Well, first off, I want it to be true that running is wonderful for you. I want that to be true because I really like it. Second, now I'll try to answer your question, but just know that it's coming from that bias. I feel like that is as Bill Urey would say, a bridge, a connected bridge.
Right.
And I agree. You went back and said, I want you to be self-oriented. I think I'd make some distinctions. So there's self-oriented, there's self-absorbed. And I
Fair.
think what I like best is self-aware. So I want to be self-aware. I don't want to be self-absorbed to the point that I can't see you as you are and hear you with your different perspective without thinking I have to react, without thinking that it's about me. So I want to be self-aware. I prefer not to be self-absorbed or self-indulgent.
Well,
I wanted to say, a couple of these people that we were talking about who sort of were taking up all the space in the room, they really were trying to impress the people around them. And so they lack that humility that Ralph was talking about.
And super smart.
And super smart.
Really knowledgeable.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no connection.
Right.
Or very little.
I can't remember his name. the guy who wrote Integrated, the book, or no, I'm sorry, Detached. Was it Bob Rosen? Does that ring a bell? Um, Psychologist who wrote the recent book Detached. I had him on the show, and he asked or said a question that he had played with for himself, I believe, was how would you want to be remembered at a party? Something that you were at and you were talking with people. And his realization was he realized and then admitted, I want to be thought of as smart.
Mm.
And then he didn't want to perceive himself as somebody who wanted to be smart. So he became, worked on kind of this a humility aspect of how do I want people to think I'm smarter? I think I'd be a better human is how he's paraphrasing if I helped them think that they were smart or thought good things about them. But coming back to the insecurity, yeah, aspect of okay, I was about to say, so I'll admit my bias. I want this to be true. I think it is, but I'm also biased that I want it to be true. I feel that in being sage, if we specifically speak accordingly, but even further have the understanding in regards to reality, emotions, and identity. I feel I'm going to use that word force again. It forces me not to be self absorbed.
Yeah.
I just can't do it. It's when I become self absorbed. It's when you ask me a question that I may fumble with and maybe insecure myself a little bit. And then I fall out of the orientation
Mm.
by becoming self absorbed. I like the correlation
Say it again, the correlation.
of when I am oriented in Sage, I can't be self-absorbed. When I fall out of the interpretation, I
Right.
think is when I have become self-absorbed all of a sudden because I probably insecured myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had something else, but I'm going to go over here to the chat. Mary says, Hannah says they were trying to impress. Isn't that a guess? How can you be certain?
That's true. That was my perception. Yeah.
Oh, she asked, is that a judgment and humility is the goal? She's calling you out, Hannah.
That was my observation,
Yeah.
whether it's true or not. But that was a mutual experience.
I would say that if we were being more precise, that you were talking about them in you.
Hmm. They
Um,
were.
and we don't use that language a lot because people seem to find it they awkward themselves. But technically, I think Hannah was talking about those other people in her. In other words, her projection of them, what they were doing, what their motivation was.
Right.
And this is that example where if we use that language, and there are other ways to say it that don't sound strange, I can say, what I'm imagining they were doing or what I'm imagining they were trying to accomplish. In other words, I don't know, but I think that they were trying to impress. Uh, our shorthand is them and me,
Right.
or him and me, or you and me. But yeah, we don't know what other people's motives are.
I would like to play with that for a minute. Mary, I appreciate you using that word, judgment. So if let's talk about tellers. We were talking about that. I always have struggled with people who just are that I perceive as tellers. They go on and on and on and on and on, they don't see. I interpret they don't seem real curious or interested at all in any other perspective, not mine, not anyone's. I don't see it because nobody else can get a word in edgewise. It seems, and when they're doing that, I tend to again, my projection, I could say my interpretation, it seems like they are insecure. Otherwise, I think they would be aware that everybody's kind of checked out, it seems like. These are these observations or are they evaluations? Because there is still the point, even though we with Sage are advocating for owning your interpretation and to some sense I would say not judging, but there's a place for discernment too, because at some point I'm deciding, is this somebody I'm going to partner with? Is this
Right.
somebody I'm going to get on a bus ride with? Is this somebody, or is this somebody who I can't seem to figure out how to connect? I think I'm not going to go back to that dinner party with that person. I mean, this is where, and Jake, you talk in, I don't know if it's in which book, but about boundaries. Maybe it's Transformative Tales. I can't remember, but just about boundaries. And I do find myself looking at that. I put focus, Mary, especially coming from my religious background, on judgment. And I'm trying to tell myself, Kevin, don't judge, don't judge. Okay, I'm not going to judge, but I'm not getting on a bus with you, buddy. Um, there's our
This also, though, I think we've taken our concerns about judgment too far, because we're all making judgments all the time about all kinds of things. So judging and judgment and evaluation in and of itself, I don't think is a good or a bad thing. Necessary, and we want to make good judgments. We want to be discerning. That's all very different than when we start to judge other people based on our projection of them. And that's what happens. That's what we're doing without realizing we're doing that. Um, it's a subtle, but I think significant distinction. The judgment in and of itself is not a problem.
fair. I align with that. I I wanted to pull out something, and I'm watching the chat if you guys have anything to put in there, but just in talking about wisdom and talking about sage orientation and speaking sagely, we've had people even here in the chat, I think or talk about the they discomfort themselves trying to speak sagely, trying to own their emotions, trying to own their experience and speaking literally differently, and they discomfort themselves. Here's where I'm curious. When we look at people who often get attributed attributions as wise, and I'll pull some out that some people may know. Whether you agree that the person is, they have at least given off a persona of that. Jordan Peterson, we talked about him before, and he literally uses the words wisdom. I think he blatantly tries to present himself as wise, and maybe he is. I'm not going to say that. The way that he speaks, though, back to that, you were talking about the Tristan guy, Jordan Peterson. I saw a clip of him recently, and he was asked a question, and I think at this point, I don't know if he does it out of wisdom or performance or what, but there's a pause. So he's sitting on stage. There's however many people out here. He's asked a question, and he'll physically respond. He'll kind of
Yeah.
think, and my gosh, if it doesn't come off as seeming wise to me. I mean, it just looks great to me. I like that. We've talked about Sadhguru, if that's how you say his name, right?
Yeah.
Uh, Same thing. He'll often pause or he'll chuckle, his belly laugh. It's not the norm. I was on a call a week ago with, I was connected with a guy who's a spiritual leader to a lot of people. And he comes from an Indian background. And so this is just the two of us on a Zoom call, and I was digging in because I was kind of vetting him as, and curious, but vetting, and ask question. He would he would sit back, and 10 seconds, 15 seconds. He would think there's nobody there to impress. I mean, we're talking, just gathering his thoughts. My point being, we could say culturally, is that weird? Yeah, I'm going to say, is wisdom weird? Yeah, I mean, this is, your book, Jake, Get Weird.
Yeah.
How I interest myself, though, that with the people who act weird like that, like the
Yeah.
people I just talked about, we attribute as wise. So do we want to just be on autopilot and, juke and roll just like everyone else with the conversation? Or, not that it's a performance, but the effort to be wise, I interest myself by proxy, um, comes off wise.
And maybe correlates to security, the conversations we've had about inner security, the inner security to present in a way that we're not overly concerned with what other people think.
Right.
Hmm.
So if I need to pause for 10 or 15 seconds to think, then that's what I'm doing. If I want to use an expression that most people don't use and that feels genuine to me, I'm not overly concerned about how other people see me. because I have a sense of inner security. Clearly, that's the case with somebody like Sadhguru. Jordan Peterson's a complicated person that I don't quite know how to read. I can't tell how much of the way he presents is compensation. He clearly is a very knowledgeable, bright, passionate guy, but stylistically comes across as a performer.
Yeah. Ralph in the chat says, I give myself the sense when someone in me is talking, that they're trancing themselves, hence not picking up boredom and facial effects.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, in my own, I don't know, there's generally no better testimony than our own experience. And as I just had this last weekend, Thanksgiving, and I had, I think the first night, I think there were 9 kids here. And when a question was asked and I'm a foot back, like we talked about, and go, the kids would jump in and start to clarify. Everybody would kind of lean in, it felt like, and they would start to clarify and give me more. Again, the perspective that I interpreted of their interest, curiosity, and I'm going to say that word again, connection. It, I almost, it's, it almost feels, I humor myself. I humor myself and gratify myself. I mean, these are my kids. I want to connect and to watch the dynamics change as I am not the dad who's jumping in with an opinion, idea, an influence, a perspective, convincing. And I kind of step back on there and often to be wise, to truly, I'd ask a clarifying question out of authenticity. So to take that context in again, I don't know. Cause as we're talking, I'm sitting thinking, how can you not take a pause before about every response? If you're really interested, if you're really curious, if you're really seeking wisdom, there's so much context. You're asking me a question out of your experience and your perspective, and you're asking me mine. And oh my goodness, there's a lot to consider here. I might need a day. And then it comes, and it's weird, and we're slowing down. But if the point is connection, we've talked about that before. We should do a survey on my podcast, on an hour podcast. How many words did Kevin say a year ago? And how many words does he say now? And now the testimonials seem to be that people are getting more value out of less words. I interest myself.
And when you say the testimonials, do you mean both your guest and your listeners?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, can I be humble and say this? I mean, from the guests, I don't care who it is and if they've been on the best shows. I'm used to getting, that was the most in-depth, insightful, curious question. What can we do more together? Here's my cell phone. That was not the case in the past. It says a great interview. I used to get that. Oh, he's one of the top interviewers. Now it's, oh man, that was an amazing conversation. I learned stuff about my own subject. I just,
Right.
I don't know a better selling point than slow the hell down and consider things. Maybe that should be the new tagline. Mary says, a foot back, I align with instead of a teller that. I also want to be listening. Yeah, I need to find out who said it to me, and it's been in the past month, but after a psychedelic journey they did, it was a guided one. And he said, I feel like I'm a foot back from everything. And I like that. Ralph says, I have the Kevin in me hyper communicative today. That you're experiencing me as hyper communicative. I don't know how to take that.
Is it more communicative rather than a teller?
Oh, good.
Is that what he means?
I would hope connection.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would hope connection. Yeah. I really, Jake, I really like the topic here, just the correlation, sage and wisdom. Again, I want to say that it kind of forces wisdom. If wisdom is understanding, and context and discernment.
And don't forget restraint. I just found that to be a really eye-opening way to think about SAGE, the restraint to hold back from responding without thinking, to hold back from telling other people about who they are, to hold back long enough to pause, just as you've been talking about, Kevin. I just found restraint to be an intriguing way to think about this.
In our retreats, we sit in a circle for a week and people share what they want to share and no one responds. And it's as though we're a circle of people witnessing what someone has to say without telling them they're okay or telling them that they are wrong or telling them about our own experience that relates to that or whatever. Um, it's it's a great practice doing that as well, just witnessing.
And people are uncomfortable usually the
Yeah,
first 2-3 days.
right.
I was going to say, didn't you say people, yeah, to sit there and quote, pour your heart out and then not get the, of course, that's what we expect. Affirmation, validation.
Right.
Huh.
And then when people do respond, instead of, Kevin, you speak, instead of me then telling you about you, if I do want to respond, I simply am going to talk about my experience, what I'm
Right.
doing to myself or within myself. So I'm not going to talk directly to you or about you. And what happens is this paradox whereby we're creating a sense of separation. And that separation paradoxically creates space for deeper connection. And I don't know that people understand it when I say it that way, because people often think of connection arising from a kind of fusion that we come together, we merge, we become one. I know what you're thinking, you know what I'm thinking. This is very different than that. And this is something we saw in John and Joyce when we met them, that they were just very clearly two separate individuals. And they never spoke for the other one. They never corrected the other one. But there was a profound connection between them. And to me, a much healthier connection, a low reactivity.
Right.
Well, what you just said there, I would think would be for some people controversial around the concept of how we perceive empathy,
Yes.
which is I'm supposed to be able to step in your shoes and go, oh my gosh, I totally understand. A term that I choose to hate, actually. That I understand, or I totally understand. But that's again feels like what we have wrapped empathy up within.
Yeah.
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 Uh, Peter in the chat says, interesting. The an acronym SAGE, or the acronym SAGE, is a word that also represents the ultimate Stoic. One of the cardinal virtues of Stoicism is wisdom. Interesting that SAGE can help us in the pursuit of that virtue. Yeah, and out here in Colorado, we have lots of sage plants, so I can pick one up and beat you with it as well. So we have all kinds of great analogies for sage.
Well, you can also use it to cleanse the room, can't you?
Yeah, burn it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I that was somewhere along the line. I remember the feeling of the day when you guys said, "Okay, we got something." Sage, subjective awareness and genuine expression. Yeah, which is why you guys will have to get at least the first Nobel Prize personally. Um, Mary says, witnessing with restraint to allow myself to care without word connecting. I don't know that I understand that. But witnessing with restraint. I think about that a lot. I mean, that's in, gosh, I keep wanting to reference resources you have that not everybody has, like the Transformative Tales, where you talk about witnessing. I think about that pretty almost daily with the kids when they're sharing something, and I'm with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
but I'm not going to validate a story that's a story. I might think more to what you just said a minute ago, Jake, though. There's probably more that I can do that maybe I'm not, where I can just tell them about me, or the them and me. I don't know. I'll play with that.
Yeah, I was talking to Peter yesterday about when we talk to people, we can really take a conversation to a much more profound level when we're clear in our own mind. Am I telling you about my experience? And that's different than if you asked me for advice, or if you said you wanted to know what I think you should do. Those are two very different things. And when I separate those in my mind, I alter the quality of the conversation. I don't allow those two to become one, because it's much harder for you, the listener, to know what I'm saying when I don't make that distinction clearly. And so there is an opportunity, I think, to do that with the kids or with anybody. But I think the foundation is the witnessing, Kevin.
I I've mentioned this before. It would be, I haven't necessarily. I've done it a little bit, but not much. But questioning, I question myself, but even to question the other person, of okay, you're telling a story. What's the motive? Are you telling just you want to be heard? You like to listen to yourself talk? Um, is it? Are you looking for input? Do you feel insecure and you're wanting validation? What is the motive? We don't normally know that, and we're left to, again, in our, I feel like hopefully in our witnessing, that we are sitting there trying to discern what is this person's motive, and then what part do I have in this, if anything, and do I want to? Just like you talked about, Hannah, when you, well, when I perceive someone who's just a teller, I'm just telling myself I'm waiting for a reason, or I'm going to make one up just to exit. Um, uh, what's my motive? Do I care? Mary says, I'm trying to understand, uh, when I ask questions and get interrupted. For example, I wasn't calling Hannah out with my project comment. I'm missing the empathy part. Well, I said that, Mary. That was my interpretation. I was playing a little bit too. I appreciated your questioning. I felt like you were questioning to learn, not to call her out. So that was Kevin's.
But I will say that Mary's made several comments about where she feels as if she's misinterpreted. And I think that if you were to do what Kevin is suggesting right now, which is to start off by articulating first in your own mind, be clear what your motive is, and then express your motive before you say anything. Say, I want to ask a question because I'm confusing myself, or I want to ask a question so I understand better. And then you say whatever you said to Hannah, there would be no misperception that you might be calling the person out, because you would have clarified up front what your motive is. And since you've brought this up at other times, I think that might be just a really valuable exercise, and see how that goes. I like the question. What's my motive? Why am I going to open my mouth and say a bunch of words?
I think I shared this, but on this note, I had a video. I did a 3-day fast recently. I had a video on that, and I was getting ready to watch something with one of my kids. And I said, "Hey, check this out real quick," and showed him the video. As soon as it ended, I interpreted that he was coming up with a rebuttal, and he started to. And I said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa." I said, "Hold on a second, buddy. Hmm. I'm perceiving, maybe, or I'm interpreting that, because I'm doing this fasting because I showed it, that I'm impressing this upon you and advocating it, and maybe helped you motivate yourself to rebuttal it." And he said, "Uh, yeah, yeah." I said, I'm sorry." I said, "And truth is, you're right. I mean, of course I'm doing it, and I got a video. Of course I'm advocating. I thought it might be of interest, but I just I think I said this, and it probably wasn't sage, but I think what I said is, I think I set you up to refute this, huh?" And so it was a interesting moment for both. And I brought it up the next day and said, man, I was thinking about it again. I think I did that. I apologize. And he's just more connection.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we're at the top of the hour.
All righty. Well, delighting myself as always to have these conversations and have people join us and ask questions. Next week, we won't be meeting. Hannah and I are going to fly to Honolulu to celebrate my birthday. Going to go to Cirque du Soleil, which is something I've wanted to do for a long time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, we can all say happy early birthday. I'll get the chance to do it though. Okay. And as you know, my birthday is Saturday.
Yeah, we do know.
Yeah, I know you know. All right. Well, happy birthday to us. I feel I've wizened myself. I think. I hope. I feel.
You look it.
Thanks. Thanks for being there, everybody.
All right.